Hi there. Welcome back to Haunting Vales. The night is silent, the world still asleep, until the first light of dawn reveals a chilling truth. A body lies motionless, its final breath stolen in the shadows of secrecy. The death at dawn is not just a murder. It is a message carefully written in silence, waiting for Hercule Poirot to decipher. What begins as a crime, cloaked in the stillness of morning, soon unravels into a web of betrayal, hidden motives, and a darkness that lurks behind the most ordinary faces. With the clock ticking and the truth buried in lies, Poirot must unravel the enigma before the rising sun burns away the last traces of evidence. Stay with us, for every ray of dawn brings us closer to the final revelation. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Haunting Vales, where every mystery comes alive in the shadows. Chapter 1. A Shadow Before Sunrise. The night air was unusually still. London lay in a velvet hush, the gas lamps along the streets burning faintly, their halos blurred by the mist that had crept in from the river. It was a quietness so profound it carried a sense of expectancy, as if the city itself held its breath. Hercule Poirot, seated upright in his armchair, sipped delicately at his tisane. He never slept easily when a case pressed upon his mind, and tonight an uneasiness stirred his little gray cells. Though no client had knocked upon his door, though no crime had yet been committed, he felt, instinctively, that some calamity hovered close, like a bird of ill omen awaiting its hour to descend. The clock upon the mantel struck 4. Poirot glanced at it sharply. Dawn approaches, he thought, and with it, I suspect, comes death. It was not long before the hush was broken. A firm knock rattled at the door, and Poirot, alert as a cat, set down his cup. His valet answered, returning moments later with Inspector Graves of Scotland Yard. The inspector's heavy features were drawn in grave concern. "Forgive the hour, Monsieur Poirot," Graves began. "There's been a tragedy. A man has been found dead on the balcony of his townhouse overlooking Hyde Park. He was wealthy, well known in business circles, Sir Reginald Whitmore." Poirot inclined his head. "Dead, you say? At such an hour as this?" "At dawn," Graves confirmed. "Shot through the heart. At first glance it appears suicide, but the scene, well, something about it is wrong. You were his acquaintance, were you not?" "I have met Sir Reginald at society gatherings," Poirot replied thoughtfully. "A proud man, most careful of his appearance, and above all, one who loved life too much to end it so untidily. No, mon ami, pardon, no, Inspector, this does not strike me as suicide. Lead me to the scene." The townhouse of Sir Reginald Whitmore stood tall and silent. Its windows shuttered against the early light. The doorman admitted them with pale face and trembling hands. On the upper balcony, the body lay slumped in a wicker chair, one arm drooping over the side, fingers stiffly curled as though still clutching at some invisible hope. A revolver rested loosely against the tiles beneath. The air smelled faintly of gunpowder. Poirot stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. The body was clad in a silk dressing gown, immaculate even in death. A silver watch lay upon the small table beside him, its glass cracked, its hands pointing to precisely 4 o'clock. "Remarkable," murmured Poirot. "Always, there are the little details. They betray the truth while men's tongues weave lies." Graves folded his arms. "The butler found him. Swears he heard the shot. Neighbors confirm the timing. No sign of forced entry. If not suicide, how do you suppose it happened?" Poirot bent, observing the revolver. He did not touch it, but leaned close enough to note the angle. His mustaches twitched in thought. "The revolver lies oddly," he remarked. "If Sir Reginald had fired upon himself, the weapon would not fall so far from his grasp. And observe, the powder burns, they are faint. Too faint for so close a wound. He straightened and fixed his keen gaze upon the inspector. "I tell you this, Inspector Graves, Sir Reginald Whitmore did not take his own life. He was murdered at the moment when night surrendered to dawn." They descended to the drawing room where several household members had gathered, pale and silent as statues. Poirot surveyed them one by one. There was Lady Eleanor Whitmore, the widow, her beauty faded but her eyes sharp with calculation. She wore mourning already, as though she had anticipated this night. Beside her sat Miss Beatrice Halliday, the secretary, her face blotched with tears, yet her posture rigid, suggesting a discipline born of secrets. Near the hearth stood Colonel Archer, an old military friend of Sir Reginald's, whose stiff back and clenched jaw hinted at a barely controlled temper. And lastly, Henry Mortlake, the business partner, sleek, polished, and cool as marble, but with a flicker in his eyes that betrayed unease. Poirot clasped his hands. "Mesdames, messieurs, no, forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, I extend to you my condolences. Yet already I see that among us lurks not grief alone, but guilt. Someone here knows more of Sir Reginald's death than they confess." Lady Eleanor's lips curved in disdain. "Are you suggesting, Monsieur Poirot, that one of us, one of his own circle, would stoop to murder?" Poirot inclined his head solemnly. "I suggest nothing, madam. I merely observe. And what I observe tells me that Sir Reginald was struck down not by despair, but by betrayal. The question is, whose hand was it that held the weapon at dawn?" Poirot's investigation began with the servants. The butler, old Cartwright, insisted he had been polishing silver below stairs when the shot rang out. The maid swore she had been asleep, yet her eyes darted nervously when questioned. The chauffeur declared he had returned only minutes before, having driven the motor car into its shed. Details, small, evasive, unsatisfactory details. Poirot tucked them all into his mind. Later, he walked the length of the balcony once more, noting the footprints upon the dew-wet tiles. Two sets, one belonging to Sir Reginald, the other smaller, narrower. A woman's, perhaps. He paused, studying the skyline as the sun lifted fully into view. The light painted the city in hues of gold and crimson. Yet the beauty of the morning could not soften the darkness of the crime. Back in his apartment, Poirot reflected. He recalled Sir Reginald's pride, his obsession with appearance, his disdain for weakness. Such a man would not depart this world by his own hand. He cast his thoughts over the suspects. Lady Eleanor, resentful widow, perhaps tired of her husband's control. Beatrice Halliday, the secretary, loyal on the surface, but what lay beneath those restrained tears. Colonel Archer, the soldier with a temper, perhaps angered by some slight. And Mortlake, the polished businessman whose gain from Reginald's death might be measured in pounds and power. Already Poirot's little gray cell stirred. Somewhere within the night's events, within the silence of dawn, lay the truth. A truth delicate as a thread, and once drawn, it would unravel the entire tapestry. Poirot leaned back, closing his eyes. "Yes," he murmured, "it begins. The death at dawn is no ending. It is only the beginning." Chapter 2, Whispers in the Light. The morning after the tragedy broke upon London with a pale sun, filtered through a haze of autumn cloud. The city stirred into its restless rhythm. Carriages rattled. Newsboys cried the day's headlines. And yet in the townhouse of Sir Reginald Whitmore, time seemed arrested. The hush of morning hung heavy, pierced only by the occasional sob or whispered conversation. Hercule Poirot arrived promptly at 8 o'clock. His small, neat frame appeared even more precise amid the disorder of grief. Every crease in his suit was sharp, his mustache gleamed with care, and his eyes, bright and penetrating, missed nothing. Inspector Graves was already present, reviewing notes in a grim, dog fashion. Poirot, he said without preamble. I've spoken with each of them. No one confesses to hearing more than a single shot. No one saw anyone leave or enter the house. Locked doors, locked windows. If it was murder, it's near impossible. Poirot lifted his chin, a faint smile playing at his lips. Impossible? Non, Inspector, you know better. The word does not exist in the vocabulary of Hercule Poirot. If the crime appears impossible, it is only because the solution is concealed in the smallest of details. He tapped the tip of his finger against his temple. The little gray cells they will provide. The inspector led him once more into the drawing room, where the family and acquaintances of the deceased awaited. Their faces were masks of polite sorrow, but beneath the surface, Poirot saw the tremors of fear, suspicion, and calculation. Lady Eleanor Whitmore, draped in black silk, reclined with a dignity that seemed almost too controlled. Beside her, Miss Beatrice Halliday, pale and restless, twisted a lace handkerchief between her fingers. Colonel Archer stood rigidly by the mantel, staring into the fire as if it were an enemy to be confronted. Henry Mortlake lingered near the window, one hand resting on the sill, his gaze fixed outward but his ears keen for every word. Poirot's eyes sparkled. We shall speak together, one by one. Truth, it has a curious habit. It hides among lies, yet when pressed gently, it emerges. Lady Eleanor Whitmore. She received Poirot with a mixture of hauteur and weariness. If you believe this household is a nest of vipers, Monsieur Poirot, you are mistaken. My husband was a difficult man, yes, but he commanded respect. His end, it is too cruel. Poirot's voice was soft. Cruel indeed. Yet tell me, Lady Eleanor, had Sir Reginald enemies? Her eyes flickered. He was a man of business. Wealth invites envy. But within these walls, no. We were a family, however strained. Poirot inclined his head. And you yourself? You were content. A pause. Her lips thinned. A wife does not speak ill of her husband in death. But perhaps, murmured Poirot, she thinks it. Her hand tightened upon the armrest, and for a moment her eyes grew hard. Then she drew herself upright. You seek scandal where none exists. I loved him, Monsieur Poirot, in my way. That is all. Poirot bowed slightly. He noted not only her words, but the tension that had betrayed her. Love in her way. What is that, if not the shadow of resentment? Miss Beatrice Halliday. The secretary entered next, a young woman of modest appearance, her eyes red from weeping. She spoke quickly, almost feverishly, as though eager to convince. Sir Reginald was a demanding employer, Monsieur Poirot, but fair. He entrusted me with his correspondence, his schedules. I cannot believe he is gone. Only last night he dictated a letter to me about a transaction with Mr. Mortlake. Poirot's interest sharpened. Ah, with Mr. Mortlake? You recall the contents. Her brow furrowed. It concerned some stocks, I think. There was tension between them. Sir Reginald accused Mr. Mortlake of withholding information, of scheming for advantage. And the letter? I placed it upon his desk for signature. It is gone now. Perhaps he destroyed it. Poirot's mustaches twitched. Or perhaps another destroyed it, knowing its value. Miss Halliday's fingers trembled. I only wished to help. Sir Reginald was stern, but I was loyal. Poirot's gaze lingered upon her pale face. Loyalty, yes, but also fear. What secret did she carry, hidden beneath those tears? Colonel Archer. The soldier strode in with stiff dignity, boots clicking upon the polished floor. He saluted Poirot half in jest. Well, monsieur, you'll be wanting the truth from me. Reginald was my comrade of many years. We did not always agree, but I respected him. His death, it is a damned tragedy. You were close, Colonel? Poirot asked mildly. Close enough. I dined here often. He trusted me more than some. I'll wager. His glance flickered briefly toward Lady Eleanor, then to Mortlake. "Tell me, Colonel," Poirot pressed, "did Sir Reginald confide troubles to you? Debts, quarrels, dangers?" Archer's jaw tightened. He mentioned concerns in his business. Mortlake again spoke of betrayal, though he gave no details. Said he would settle it at dawn, whatever that meant. Poirot leaned forward. "At dawn. That is curieux, n'est-ce pas? Forgive. Yes, that is curious. And now he is dead at dawn. You see the significance, Colonel." The old soldier shifted uneasily. "I see coincidence. That's all." But Poirot saw more. Henry Mortlake. The businessman entered last, composed and urbane. His suit was immaculate, his tone polite, but edged with impatience. "Monsieur Poirot, I'll save you the trouble. Sir Reginald and I had our disagreements, yes. But business quarrels do not end in murder. To suggest otherwise is absurd." "Absurd?" Poirot tilted his head. "Then perhaps you explain the missing letter Miss Halliday speaks of. It concerned you." Mortlake's lips tightened. "A draft, nothing more. Sir Reginald accused me of maneuvering. He was mistaken. I warned him his ventures were reckless. If anything, I sought to save him from ruin." Poirot observed quietly. "And yet, upon his death, it is you who stands to inherit the controlling shares, is it not?" A flicker quickly masked. "Business passes on, monsieur. It is no crime to profit from the misfortune of circumstance." "No crime, perhaps," Poirot said softly. "Yet motive, yes, motive it provides." Mortlake's eyes hardened. "I will not be slandered by insinuations." Poirot bowed slightly, but inwardly his mind raced. The mask of composure was too perfect, too rehearsed. When the interviews concluded, Poirot returned to the balcony once more. He stooped to the cracked watch upon the table, examining its hands frozen at 4. "Strange," he murmured. "Why cracked when no fall has occurred, unless it was struck deliberately to suggest the hour of death?" His eyes shone with sudden intensity. "Ah, a false trail? The watch is no witness, it is a liar. And whoever said it thus hoped to mislead Hercule Poirot." Inspector Graves frowned. "You mean the time of death isn't 4 o'clock?" "Precisely, my friend. The body was found at dawn, yes. But the death, it may have come earlier. Or later. The true moment is hidden, wrapped in deception. And once I know when Sir Reginald died, I shall know who killed him." The day wore on, and Poirot's little gray cells spun their delicate web. He considered motives, inheritance, resentment, betrayal. He considered opportunity, the locked house, the missing letter, the footprints upon the balcony. And always, the question of dawn returned to him. Why dawn? Why stage the crime at the threshold of morning? As the sun dipped once more toward evening, Poirot knew the answer was close, tantalizingly close. But the truth, like the mist upon the Thames, still hovered just out of reach. Chapter 3: Secrets Beneath the Morning. The following day began with heavy skies. A pale light filtered through the windows of Poirot's flat as he sat at his breakfast table, untouched toast resting on the plate, his mind wholly occupied by the riddle of Sir Reginald Whitmore's death. He had returned home late the night before, but sleep had evaded him. Instead, his thoughts had circled endlessly. The frozen watch, the footprints upon the balcony, the missing letter. By mid-morning, Inspector Graves arrived, carrying fresh reports from the yard. "Poirot," he said wearily, "the coroner confirms your suspicion. Powder burns inconsistent with suicide. The bullet entered at an angle impossible if Whitmore had fired upon himself. Officially, we declare it murder." Poirot nodded gravely. "Bien, we are agreed. But the murderer is still at large, and he believes himself clever enough to mislead us. That, Inspector, I cannot permit." He rose, straightening his jacket. "We return now to the house. There are secrets still to be unearthed, secrets that linger beneath the morning." The Whitmore residence was a gloom of hushed voices and anxious glances. Lady Eleanor received them in the drawing room, her face pale but controlled. The colonel sat nearby, pipe unlit, staring at the carpet with a soldier's grim patience. Miss Halliday hovered near the writing desk, as though guarding it from intrusion, while Mortlake strolled the perimeter of the room, outwardly calm, but with a tension in his shoulders that betrayed the strain of scrutiny. Poirot's eyes swept over them all. He knew that each harbored secrets, and secrets had a curious way of rising to the surface under pressure. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began smoothly, "I must intrude further upon your grief, for the truth is yet concealed, and concealment is the ally of the murderer. Will you indulge me in a few small questions?" They consented with varying degrees of reluctance. Poirot turned first toward Miss Halliday. "Last night, mademoiselle, you spoke of a letter dictated by Sir Reginald, one concerning Mr. Mortlake. You placed it upon his desk, and now it is gone. I have searched and found only an empty blotter. Tell me, who else had access?" Her fingers knotted around her handkerchief. "Only Sir Reginald himself, and perhaps Lady Eleanor, if she entered later. I left it there, I swear." Mortlake interjected smoothly, "A draft of no consequence. If it existed at all, it was surely discarded." Poirot fixed him with a sharp look. "Discarded, or removed by someone who feared its contents. A letter may be more dangerous than a bullet, monsieur." The businessman's mouth tightened, but he said nothing further. Poirot turned next to Lady Eleanor. "Madam, your grief is great, yet you bear it with admirable composure. I ask you directly, had your marriage become strained?" Her eyes flashed. "You dare. My husband was not an easy man, it is true, but I bore my duties as wife. What else is left to me but composure? Shall I wail and tear my hair to satisfy you?" Poirot inclined his head gently. "Not so. But know this, restraint may hide sorrow, or it may hide something else entirely." She met his gaze with cold defiance, but Poirot did not relent. Finally, he turned to the colonel. "You, my dear colonel, were his comrade. You spoke yesterday of words Sir Reginald uttered, that he would settle something at dawn. What did you understand by that?" Archer shifted uneasily. "He mentioned Mortlake, spoke of dishonor, of betrayal in business. I told him to rest, to wait until morning. He laughed, said dawn would bring clarity. I did not imagine it would bring death." Poirot's mustache quivered as he murmured, "Clarity, yes. For some, clarity of purpose. For others, clarity of guilt." Later, Poirot requested to see Sir Reginald's private study. The room was lined with books, the scent of leather and ink lingering in the air. Upon the desk, neatly arranged, lay papers of routine correspondence. Yet Poirot's eyes fixed instantly upon the writing blotter. With delicate fingers, he lifted the sheet of blotting paper and held it to the light. There, faint but unmistakable, was the reverse impression of words. He fetched a pencil and lightly shaded across the surface. Slowly, letters emerged, forming fragments of sentences. "Betrayal will be exposed at dawn," and "Mortlake will answer." Poirot smiled grimly. So, Sir Reginald intended confrontation at dawn. And lo, he is dead at that hour. Coincidence? Non. It is design. Inspector Graves Scolith. So Mortlake's our man? Poirot shook his head. Nah, my friend. Too easy. Too direct. Always, the true murderer hides behind the obvious suspect. We must dig deeper. As they left the study, Poirot's keen eye caught a glint upon the carpet near the balcony doors. Stooping, he retrieved a small object, a cufflink, gold, engraved with the letter A. He held it up silently, and Colonel Archer's face blanched. "That is yours, mon colonel?" Poirot asked softly. Archer swallowed. "It must have fallen when I visited last week. Reginald and I shared a drink here. Ah, yes, it is mine. Last week, Poirot murmured. Perhaps, or perhaps last night. You see, the balcony doors were opened recently, and the dew upon the tiles tells me the one who stepped there did so not days ago, but within hours of the death. The colonel's jaw tightened. Are you accusing me, monsieur? Poirot's voice was calm. I accuse no one. I merely observe. And my observations suggest you were upon that balcony not long before Sir Reginald met his end. The room fell silent. Lady Eleanor's face grew pale. Miss Halliday stifled a gasp, and Mortlake allowed himself the faintest of smiles. Poirot tucked the cufflink into his pocket. The truth, it grows closer. Already, the strands of the web draw tight. But still one question torments me. When precisely did Sir Reginald die? The watch lies, but the body... Ah, the body does not. Poirot requested to view the physician's report again, paying special attention to the body's condition. There he found what he sought, the stiffness of the limbs, the cooling of the flesh. Calculations spun in his mind, precise and orderly. He spoke aloud, to no one in particular. Not at 4, no. The death occurred closer to 2. 2 o'clock in the morning. And what is most curious, none of those in the house can account for their movements at that hour. Inspector Gravis Froneth. They all claim to be asleep. Precisely, said Poirot. Too convenient. And so one of them lies. At 2 o'clock, Sir Reginald was slain. At 4, the scene was arranged, the watch cracked, the body staged. And at dawn, the world was invited to discover fiction. He tapped his temple. A clever ruse, but not clever enough for Hercule Poirot. That evening, Poirot walked alone through Hyde Park, the air cool, the leaves rustling softly in the wind. He reflected upon the tangle of motives. Mortlake's profit, Eleanor's resentment, Archer's loyalty turned to anger, Halliday's fear of exposure. Each had reason. Each had opportunity. Yet only one had stepped into the chill of night, had lifted the revolver, had fired the fatal shot. Poirot halted beneath a gas lamp, his breath misting in the air. He spoke softly, almost to himself. The murderer believes the dawn conceals him, but in truth, the dawn reveals. Soon I shall gather them all. Soon the lies will shatter, and the hand that killed will be laid bare. His eyes glittered with certainty. The case neared its climax. Chapter 4. The Truth at Dawn. The following night, as darkness folded itself over London once more, Hercule Poirot prepared his stage. He had requested all those connected to the death of Sir Reginald Whitmore to gather once again in the great drawing-room of the townhouse. The lamps burned low, casting long shadows across the walls, and the silence was deep, broken only by the crackle of fire in the grate. They came reluctantly, each with their own burden of guilt, fear, or impatience. Lady Eleanor, her morning gown pristine, sat in rigid elegance. Miss Beatrice Halliday fidgeted nervously, pale as chalk, her eyes darting from Poirot to the carpet. Colonel Archer stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his soldierly bearing unshaken, but his jaw set in grim anticipation. Henry Mortlake, immaculate as ever, leaned against the mantel with an air of forced composure. Inspector Graves observed from the corner, notebook in hand, his expression tight with skepticism. Poirot stood before them, his small frame commanding the room through sheer presence. He tapped his fingertips together, surveying the faces before him. At last he spoke. Mesdames and messieurs, no, forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, we arrive at the truth. Sir Reginald Whitmore was not the victim of despair. He was murdered. The scene upon the balcony was carefully staged, the watch set falsely, the weapon arranged. A tableau meant to deceive. But Hercule Poirot is not so easily deceived. A ripple passed through the room. Lady Eleanor's hand tightened upon her handkerchief. Mortlake shifted uneasily. Archer's lips pressed into a hard line. Poirot's mustaches quivered as he continued. We begin with time. The cracked watch told us 4 o'clock, but the condition of the body revealed otherwise. Sir Reginald died not at 4, but nearer to 2. Between those hours, someone arranged the body, and someone cracked the watch to mislead us. Why? Because that person needed an alibi for the true moment of death. He turned suddenly, fixing his gaze upon Miss Halliday. Mademoiselle, you claim to have left the letter upon the desk. Yet it vanished. It spoke of Mortlake, of betrayal, of exposure at dawn. You wept for your employer, but also, I think, you wept for yourself. For you feared discovery. Tell us, why did you tremble so? Miss Halliday's lips parted, but no words came. Her hand shook as she pressed the handkerchief to her face. Poirot held up a hand. Courage, mademoiselle. I accuse you not, at least, not of murder. But you concealed something. You destroyed the letter at Lady Eleanor's request, did you not? Gasps rose from the room. Lady Eleanor stiffened. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Yes, he said softly. I see it now. Lady Eleanor, you wish to protect yourself. The letter named Mortlake, yes, but it also revealed your knowledge of your husband's business schemes, your own correspondence with his enemies. That letter would have ruined you. So you commanded Miss Halliday to burn it. She obeyed, for she is loyal, but terrified. And so the letter was lost. Lady Eleanor's face blanched, but her voice rang with cold authority. You presume much, Monsieur Poirot. To burn a letter is not to kill a man. Indeed, Poirot agreed gently. It is not, but it shows us how fear and concealment entwine. You fear disgrace, madam, but not enough to kill. Your strength lies in calculation, not violence. Poirot turned sharply to Colonel Archer. And you, mon colonel, you left behind the cufflink upon the carpet by the balcony doors. You swore it was from a week past. Lies. The dew upon the balcony betrayed you. You were there in the night. Archer's face flushed crimson. He drew himself upright, his voice harsh. Yes, I went out onto that balcony. Reginald summoned me. He was furious, raving about Mortlake, about betrayal. I tried to calm him, but he dismissed me. I left before 2 o'clock, I swear it. I did not kill him. Poirot regarded him coolly. A soldier's oath is strong, and I believe you. You quarreled, yes. You stormed away, but your anger was not murder. You left Reginald alive. The cufflink condemns you of carelessness, not of crime. Archer sagged slightly, relief mingling with shame. And so, Poirot continued softly, we come to the last. His gaze fell upon Henry Mortlake. The businessman's polished exterior seemed suddenly brittle. Sir Reginald discovered something, did he not? He intended to confront you. At dawn, he said. At dawn, he would expose your betrayal. And so, you came earlier. At 2 o'clock, while the house slept, you entered his study. You quarreled. He accused you. And you, fearing ruin, drew the revolver. Mortlake's face darkened. This is outrageous. You have no proof. Poirot's voice sharpened. No proof. But I have. Consider Monsieur the Watch. Who but you, with your knowledge of Reginald's habits, would think to stage such a deception? Consider the missing letter. It was addressed to you. Consider also the financial records I have examined this day. You, Mortlake, stood to gain immeasurably from Whitmore's death. His shares, his silence, his reputation, all became yours with his demise. Mortlake's composure cracked. His lips trembled, his eyes darted. Poirot's voice rang out, decisive. You killed him at 2 o'clock, upon the balcony, when the city still slumbered. Then you arranged the scene. You placed the revolver by his hand. You cracked the watch at 4 to suggest suicide. You thought the dawn would shield you, but it betrayed you. For the true dawn reveals all. And so I say to you, Henry Mortlake, you are the murderer of Sir Reginald Whitmore. The room erupted. Lady Eleanor gasped. Miss Halliday sobbed. Colonel Archer uttered a curse beneath his breath. Mortlake staggered back, his hands raised in protest. "It is a lie," he cried. "I was not there." But Inspector Graves stepped forward, voice grim. "We have witnesses, Mortlake. Poirot asked us to check. A cabman saw you enter this street near 2 o'clock that morning. The game is up." Mortlake's defiance crumbled. He sank into a chair, his face ashen. "He would have ruined me. Everything I built. He would have destroyed it all. I had no choice." Poirot's eyes were sorrowful. "There is always a choice, monsieur. To kill is to end not only a life, but your own honor. Now, the law will claim you." The household sat in stunned silence as Mortlake was led away. Poirot, his task complete, stood quietly by the fire. "Always," he said softly, "it is the little things. A watch, a footprint, a cufflink. They speak when men lie. And when one listens closely, the truth emerges, even at dawn." He turned, his gaze distant. Sir Reginald Whitmore sought to confront betrayal. He found instead death. But justice, justice has no hour. It comes, whether at dusk or dawn. Poirot bowed his head, and the case was closed. And so concludes The Death at Dawn, a Hercule Poirot mystery. If you enjoyed this case of betrayal and revelation, do not forget to subscribe for more mysteries of the great detective. Each story is a new puzzle, a new shadow to be unveiled. Until next time, keep your little gray cells alert.